morning, I'm Renee Summerour with the Las Vegas Review-Journal. We wanted to give you an update on the fire that killed former Zappos CEO Tony Hsieh. There is a Zoom presser going on right at this moment. Let's go ahead and listen in.
Muted and place any questions you may have in the chat field. We'll try to give this a 1 hour time limit, and this meeting is being recorded, just so you know, both by media and by our side. And thank you, and we can begin. You want to give us the first question there, Dave?
Sure. First question is from Kevin Hogan. Does anyone face any criminal charges?
Following a diligent and thorough investigation in partnership with the New London Fire Department, the New London Police Department's investigation has concluded no criminal violations and/or aspects in association with this incident.
Is there any autopsy results on the deceased as to precise cause of death?
As of this moment,
Rosemary Settle joined the meeting.
Let's see. Next one is Mr. Hsieh at Pequot home when firefighters responded 2 days before the November 18th fire.
I think that's unknown. He was in town at that time. I'm not sure if he was in the home when those calls came in.
Can you repeat the answer to the autopsy results as someone joined and the audio cut out?
certainly. The Chief Medical Examiner's autopsy report is still pending. It has not been completed, so we are unable to forward that information at this time.
Next question, will the results from the OCME change the findings in any way? Are you awaiting toxicology results?
Once again, the report has not been completed, but at this time, we don't believe so. But I can't rule that out. But it doesn't appear at this point in time, from all the information we've gathered in the investigation, that there are any criminal aspects to this.
Follow up to criminal charges question. Any civil liability or any civil investigations?
There's none that we're aware of at this point.
Did emergency responders administer naloxone after pulling Mr. Hsieh from the home?
That we will have to check on. We're not releasing any of the medical information at this time, as that's a HIPAA violation.
What new information would prompt the investigation to reopen?
It would be any piece of information that could either eliminate 3 of the potential sources or add information to another source of this fire. So it's any information that can help point to the cause of the fire.
John Trainer is asking, is there a specific cause of the fire? What started it and where did it originate?
The cause of the fire at this point of the investigation is undetermined. There are 4 possible scenarios that could have developed into this fire. The first being a carelessly discarded smoking material. Second, there was a propane heater being used in the area of origin that was close to combustibles. Third, there were candles in the area of fire origin that could have caused the fire. And fourth, it could have been a careless act or even an intentional act by Mr. Hsieh.
Can you explain more about Tony Hsieh's possible involvement in starting the fire and what was found which could indicate his state of mind at the time?
I don't know that you could really indicate what's in somebody's state of mind at the time of the fire, so I don't really know how I can even articulate an answer to that. And they're looking for permission to...
Yeah, I sent that to
Rochelle.
To Rochelle. I don't know how to do that here. That was forwarded to Rochelle. I'll send her another message.
I'm sorry. Chief, what was that?
They wanted you to grant permission so the media could record this.
Okay.
I guess you have to do it on your computer on your end.
Okay.
All right. Fern, do you want to talk more about that first part of that question or no? Can you explain more about Tony's possible involvement or no?
No, I think we just.
Yeah, it was clear in the report.
Let's see. What is the most likely cause of the 4 possibilities outlined in the report? That's the next question.
I don't know that I can answer that. If you read in the report, there are 2 possibilities that I think are a lesser of a possibility, but none of the 4 can be eliminated. So for me to formulate an opinion on that, it would be inappropriate.
Next question is a large one. Can you provide a clearer picture of the fires that night? Was there was an intentional fire started by candles that was extinguished? Then there was another fire, Hsieh started with a plastic bag. Was the plastic bag fire put out? Then there was the 3rd and final fire.
There, earlier in the evening, before the fire department even responded to the fire, there was a accidental candle fire on the blanket. And that's articulated in the report. And you can see the details on the time frame of that in the report. Additionally, earlier in the evening, there was an occasion where Mr. Hsieh had lit a Ziploc baggie on fire. And in a conversation with his staff, they brought in a heater because they thought he lit the fire to keep warm.
Can you talk a little bit more about the propane heater? Is having a 20-pound propane tank in a storage shed a fuel for, I assume, a heater?
Rare.
Oh, just fuel, like, I'm not sure what he's trying to say. Is having a 20-pound propane tank in a storage shed to fuel a heater rare, I guess?
That particular heating unit is not listed to be used in the space that it was used at. So is it rare that it's used in a situation like that? It's not. It's an inappropriate place to use that. Those particular heating units, just from the nature of how they combust the propane, will produce carbon monoxide. So using it in an unvented area could be dangerous.
Next question. Can you describe what the security footage showed in the minutes before the fire started?
That's all in the report.
I'm trying to give you some more information that's not in the report, but it's really our observations are really laid out in the report very clearly. So for me to add to that would be difficult.
Next question. To clarify, was the shed locked from the inside?
Yes, it was. If actually, if you can throw up the photo.
Sure.
If you look at the shed door, you zoom in on that, David? If you look at the door, the top is it's a modern keypad lock. And that has a thumb lock on the inside of the door, and that's a deadbolt lock. At the time of the fire, Mr. Hsieh closed the door, and it sounded as though he locked the lock. And that would have prevented, without the access code, from getting in from the outside. You'll see the lock below that. That's a regular latch lock. And during the time when the friends were trying to get him out, they broke the lock, the doorknob off.
Can we stop sharing?
Yeah.
Just go to the next question. What is your understanding of why Mr. Hsieh went into the shed that night, and what was he doing there?
My understanding of why he went in the shed that night was because he had an argument with the owner of the home, and then he left the home and went outside.
Was Tony communicating with anyone, including the first responders, during the fire?
He was not communicating with any of the first responders during the fire.
During the November 16th calls, what were the plastic pieces that were partially melted and which the firefighters soaked in water?
Plastic plates and plastic utensils.
Your report states that Mr. Hsieh may have been intoxicated. Can you be more specific? Was it alcohol or drugs? There's a suggestion that possibly he may have been huffing solvent. Please clarify.
We have to wait on the toxicology reports for that.
Right. If you notice in my report, we list what we actually saw there. Without a toxicology report, we can't say that he was intoxicated.
Your investigation concluded that the fire may have been set intentionally and that he locked himself inside the shed. Yet the medical examiner ruled the death as an accident. How do you square that?
I don't. One of the four possibilities, even if he intentionally set the fire, it's one of the four possibilities that we couldn't eliminate. So I don't understand how I could answer that question.
Please talk about the physical evidence which led investigators to theorize Mr. Hsieh may have been impaired at the time of the fire.
The physical evidence is, again, it's listed in a report. There was evidence of marijuana use. There were the liqueur bottles of, what is it?
Fernet Branca.
Yeah, Fernet Branca. And then there was the nitrous containers, all within that space.
Are there any portions of the investigation beyond the autopsy report that are still considered active or ongoing?
From the police aspect, barring the autopsy report, no.
From the fire department standpoint, without any additional information or evidence, the case is at a standstill.
Do you have any clarity on why Brett Gorman was checking on Hsieh every 10 minutes and logging his checks on Post-its? I'm not seeing a reason as to why he was doing this in the incident report.
I don't know that we actually know. It is the belief that he was asked to do that by Mr. Hsieh.
Is there any indication Mr. Hsieh tried to escape?
I don't know.
Back to the combination lock. Did you say when Mr. Hsieh locked from the inside, the combination would not work? Would not work for someone outside trying to get in?
No, that's not correct. The lock would work if you entered the code, and the lock would work. Matter of fact, after during the origin and cause, we tested the lock, and the mechanism did work with the right code.
Was it ever determined whether he was trapped or barricaded during the fire? Both words were used in first responder radio traffic.
I don't know what the proper word to use, but when he closed the door at 3:15 in the morning, he latched the door. The doors were not barricaded from the inside. The door was just locked.
Next question. Could you describe Tony's injuries?
I don't have that report in front of me. I don't know.
That would all be contained within
Yes,
the autopsy
yes.
report.
Have the homeowner, friends, family, etc. been cooperative with investigators?
I think all parties involved were cooperative with the fire investigation.
Any idea why Tony was traveling with a nurse?
Don't know.
To add to the nurse question, do you know why she was staying at the Marriott and how far is the Marriott from the house? Is there a time frame for when the autopsy report will be released?
Do you know the second part of that, Cap?
In regards to the medical examiner's report, to put it, but we're at their time frame. Obviously, they're working diligently, but we cannot or are not in control of when it will be completed. We only believe that it will be sooner than later.
As far as the first part of that question, I don't know that we know why the nurse was staying at the Marriott. Also, the driver of the limousine stayed at the Marriott as well. And what would you say that's driving time from here? 10, 15 minutes.
10 minutes.
Yeah, from New London.
Clarification on the code issue. Did no one have the code to the lock?
All but one person in the home at the time of that fire were visitors. The owner did have the code, and if you listen to the 911, the owner is trying to give the code to the occupants or the guests who is trying to enter it in. One piece of information that's interesting to know about that is that particular lock assembly, if you enter the code improperly on two occasions, it locks out the code for 20 seconds. So all of that played into why the lock assembly wasn't operational.
It's the same question.
Yeah, we already answered the
Yeah, we don't
question
have
about
the
having
answer
the
to the
autopsy
answer.
results. How many people escaped from the house during the fire?
I think it's important to note there, the house itself was not on fire. It was the shed attachment to the structure, so,
If you could show the photo, David, of the house from the rear.
Same schedule.
Yeah.
Here's the,
So just a reminder, the shed is to the right. That's actually attached to the outside of the house. So all of the occupants that were inside the house were able to evacuate. And I think it's 6 people, but I'm not sure. I'd have to look.
Yeah.
all right. Back to the fires question. Can you describe in more detail the fire Mr. Hsieh set with the plastic bag? Was it just a bag or did other things catch on fire? Was it extinguished?
It was just a small Ziploc bag, and it had a few Post-it notes inside it, and that was it, and it was extinguished.
Were any of the witnesses impaired or intoxicated when they spoke to the investigators the night of the fire?
I don't know that. I can't answer. I don't know that.
Just to confirm, has the death been ruled accidental?
And that's the case, Captain.
that would be pending the conclusion of the ME's report. Outside of that, we have no indication that it was not accidental.
Clarify, how many times was the fire department or police called to the house during the period that Mr. Hsieh was staying there? Any other incidents not otherwise reported?
The fire department, it would be the 2 fire alarms that were on the 16th, and then the fire on the 18th. And I'm not sure of police interaction.
No.
Can your interviews with friends, family, witnesses, what had they said about Tony and fire, candles, etc.?
The interviews with the witnesses said that Tony does enjoy candles, and that's been well reported. It reminds him of a simpler time in his life, is what the common trend on the answers to that was.
How was the Ziploc bag fire extinguished?
That was extinguished by Mr. Hsieh.
Is there audio to accompany the police body camera footage? Any plans to release it?
At this time, the footage that was released is as is. That will remain a decision that will be made at a later time.
What time did Hsieh leave the house and go into the shed that night?
Somewhere shortly before midnight.
How common is it to not be able to determine the exact cause of the fire?
It's not unusual. If you think of the fire, actually, can you show the fire, or show the one where the area of origin is? If you look at the front of that shed, in that area, that is the area of origin of this particular fire. In this area of origin were all that I stated in the report, were the carelessly discarded smoking materials, both cigarettes and a marijuana pipe. In that area of origin was also candles. In that area of origin was also the propane heater. And as previously mentioned, we know that Mr. Hsieh had lit a fire to keep warm earlier in the evening. So in a case like this, it's not unusual by the mere fact that there are so many different sources of the ignition of this fire that you can't eliminate all of them. So in this particular case, it's not an unusual report to call this as undetermined.
When was the last time someone died in a New London fire, a residential fire?
I think it was November of 2017,
27.
yeah, November of 2017.
What prevented the fire in the attached shed from igniting the rest of the house?
The inside wall of the shed was 5/8 sheetrock, and that covered the entire wall of the shed, so it contained it into the shed.
Is that it for questions?
I think that's it. Yeah, that's it.
No, that's it. Would anybody have any more questions? Is that new there?
Talked about the rest of the house. What exactly did Mr. Hsieh lock? When exactly did Mr. Hsieh lock the door to the shed? Was the only entry to the shed the one that faces outside?
The only entry to the shed was the one that faces the outside. And reviewing the security video, sometimes he locked it. Occasionally he locked the door during the night, and sometimes he didn't. But he did lock the door somewhere around 3:14.
Are you able to distribute the Zoom recording? Never got permission.
The Zoom recording would have to be released probably by our IT director, and we'd have to check with our law director. This is something new for us with the Zoom meeting, so we will check on that. Please send me an email on that.
What time did this exchange occur? Ebert is heard saying, "You're going to smoke yourself out."
I just need to check. I wrote it in the report. Is there another question while I'm looking?
Yeah, had he been doing whippets that evening?
Yeah, next question is, had he been doing with it?
There's evidence there, but we don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, we saw the evidence of that. Whether he was doing whippets that evening or not, we can't say that. We can't talk to him.
Right.
Do you have that in the report, David?
That was the time they had that conversation.
That conversation occurred back to the Hebert question was about 1 o'clock. And it's specifically mentioned in the origin and cause report. If you don't have any of the reports from the fire department or the police department, if you put your email address in the chat, we'll make sure it gets to you.
Would you rather want me to just type an email in there so like, instead of us?
Yeah.
Actually, yeah,
Yeah.
that would- yes.
We'll have Dave, Inspector Heine, put Fire Marshal Scow's email address in there. Do you want yours in there too, Captain?
Yeah, you can put mine in there.
And Captain Wright's also.
You're right.
WRITC.
Lowercase, David.
Why is it doing that?
I don't think it matters.
Yeah, I think it'll work either way.
There were a few other questions.
Okay.
You consider it odd that his friends knew there were 2 fires set in the shed and left Mr. Hsieh there and checked on him occasionally?
I don't know how to answer that. I
answer
don't know.
If you want to get updates on timing of the autopsy report, is the best way through New London Fire Department?
Probably the police department would be better.
Or they can contact the ME's office directly.
Yeah. Did you want to?
You can either contact us or understand that we will make it available when we receive it.
We provided Captain Wright's email address there, should you have any other questions for the New London Police Department as well.
Thank you, sir.
Um,
I appreciate you.
Is it common for several buried accelerants to be found in the same spot, in this case near the door ignition area, in cases where a fire wasn't intentionally set there?
Well, the shed is a very small shed. So whether it's common or not, it's a difficult question to answer. But it just is what it is with this case, that there were that many potential ignition sources in this area of origin.
Let's see. Yeah, those were distributed. Oh, you want it?
Yes, the photos were actually distributed via the email, so if you need those, you can, again, email Vern Scow, Fire Marshal, and we can provide you a copy.
Is there any understanding of why Mr. Hsieh went to the shed instead of leaving the property like the owner had asked?
I don't know.
Had Mr. Hsieh expressed thoughts of hurting himself or suicidal thoughts?
Don't know.
Is that it?
That's it.
We have till 2 o'clock, so feel free to enter your questions. If there are no more, we can end this meeting.
Body footage.
That was a police.
Why was Daniel Park wearing a body camera? The body camera footage from the police department.
Yeah, the body cameras are from the police department.
Somebody called the Bridgeport Hospital.
Yes, he was flown shortly after being stabilized at L&M Hospital. He was flown to Bridgeport Hospital. So 5:30, 6 o'clock
Yeah,
that
around
morning.
6 a.m., I believe it was.
Where was the camera located that captured the footage of the smoke coming out of the shed?
Can you show the photo, David? We'll zoom in on it. It's easier to show you. If you look at the outside photo,
I think they're asking where was the camera located that showed the smoke? Are they talking about the body camera?
I don't know.
maybe
The camera
security
footage
Yeah.
that is above the shed, you can see the camera right above the door.
Yeah.
Said you could hear locks moving.
Yes. Yes, there's audio with that camera.
How common is it for security cameras to have sound?
Most do at this point in time.
Yeah.
That's not uncommon.
The phone found in the shed belonging to Mr. Hsieh, what information was recovered from it?
No pertinent information was gained or needed from the phone.
Did any witnesses say the purpose of the Maui trip?
The only comments that were mentioned to the fire investigative team was that they were going to Maui to get away for a break.
Were any messages on the post-it notes, or have they been destroyed?
A Puerto Rico trip. Oh, I'm sorry.
Or any message on the post. The post-it notes had the timestamp of the time that they went and checked on Mr. Hsieh.
Talk about that. Any witnesses say the purpose of the Puerto Rico trip?
I don't know. We know that they went to Puerto Rico and then came to New London.
Very answerable.
Blake, does that answer your question?
We don't know the answer to the travel outside of those two destinations.
Was he in New London for the Puerto Rico trip?
We don't know that. Yeah. The house was a new purchase. I think it was in August.
What was the period of stay in London?
I don't know.
It was less than a week.
It was,
Less than a week, I would go with that.
yeah. From our investigation, we know they came from Puerto Rico to New London, and that was literally less than a week. Regarding struggling with drugs and alcohol, we wouldn't know that. That's for family and friends to answer.
Same with the next one. Mr. Hsieh and Mr. Brown, where they're coming from, we can't.
Yeah, we can't
for
speak to
them.
that either. We don't know that. We know they've been business colleagues for years.
In reference to the November 16th fire alarm calls, was there an explanation of what was going on and why there were burn utensils?
The stovetop burner was accidentally turned on. And those utensils, the plastic utensils and the plates were on the stove.
Where was the location of the candle that was found burning during the November 16th call?
I don't know the answer to that. The lieutenant just referenced it in his report.
The report references arguments between Rachel and Tony, mess/condition of things in the home. Any other details about what was messy, what condition they were arguing about?
I don't know that we can add anything to that.
Is there anything suspicious about the November 16th calls?
No, there wasn't.
Any other questions?
Was Rachel interviewed? Was her incident report interview sent out?
Rachel was interviewed, and she gave a written statement, and that has not been sent out.
Do you think Mr. Hsieh's death was preventable?
I think like any situation such as this, things can be prevented.
Can I see?
Can I mute it for a minute? I want to ask.
We'll go to
As a normal course of business, we do not release written statements provided by witnesses.
To go back to the previous question about being preventable, I'm going to let Fire Marshal Scow expand on that just a little bit.
the one thing in that shed that we noticed, there was a carbon monoxide alarm in the shed, and that was sounding, and you when you listen to the body camera from the police, you'll hear it in the background. The carbon monoxide alarm sounded very, very late. In this particular case, if there were a smoke alarm in that shed, in that space, that could have given a notification to the family and friends that there was a problem in the shed, and that could have been early on in the evening. So simple things such as smoke alarms really could have been beneficial in this case.
Any other information to be released?
We released everything, right?
Yeah, I think there are, for the lack of space of sending the emails this morning, we didn't send all of the photos. If you wish to have the rest of the photos, send an email. There will be a charge for those. because we have to put them on an electronic device of some sort to get them to you.
How long was the fire burning before friends noticed?
We noticed in the video at about 3:14 in the morning, and then 3:24 they realized that there's a fire in the shed.
Person saying their audio cut out, is it possible for them to see Rachel Brown's written statement?
As a normal course of business, we don't release statements, so at this time it is not available.
Does the carbon monoxide alarm suggest that your propane heater is what triggered the alarm?
The carbon monoxide alarm suggests that there's carbon monoxide, high elevations of carbon monoxide. Certainly the propane heater will give off carbon monoxide. But even the fire that's burning in the shed itself will give off carbon monoxide.
They're asking if is there a reason other witness statements were provided but not Rachel Brown?
I'm unaware that other witness statements were made available in the notice that went out, but I will obviously and most definitely check into that.
We have about 15 minutes left. Would there be any more questions for us?
Did Andy Hsieh provide a written statement as well? No, he did not.
No. That was a no.
He went to the hospital.
Email the other photos, send that to me, vscow@New London. It's in the chat already.
Okay, so if that's all, we're going to end the Zoom meeting now. I understand the New York.
All right, that was New London, Connecticut fire officials going over the report that they just released regarding Tony Hsieh's death. According to that report, they say that the evidence that they did find was that Hsieh may have been impaired at the time. According to the reports, they say Whippet brand nitrous oxide chargers were found. They also say that whipped cream dispensers, marijuana pipe, and liquor bottles were also found. They were also saying that in the area where Hsieh was found, they found a propane heater, candles, and again, officials are not sure whether this was a careless act or an intentional act as far as the fire was concerned. And one thing that they did want to point out was that this was not a fire in the house. This was on the property, but in a shed right there, as you can see in the video, next to the house, but the fire did not damage any part of the home. They're also saying that evidence points that there was an argument between Tony Hsieh and the owner of the property, and that happened shortly before he went to the shed. They are saying that the owner may have kicked him out of the home based on previous reports and complaints. Again, those are things that will come out and were asked during that presser. They also said that the autopsy report, it's unknown when that autopsy report will come out, but officers, New London officers say that they will get that out as soon as possible. They also noted that at the time of the fire, they found that the door was locked, that friends had to break in order to try to get Tony out. So that again was the New London, Connecticut fire officials answering questions, I should say, regarding the new report that was released regarding Tony Hsieh's death. And right now you are looking at body cam footage of when officers and fire officials got there. The cause of the blaze is undetermined, but again, they are saying that there could have been a possibility that there was a carelessness or that Hsieh may have intentionally set the fire. Now, as part of the report, officials released a 911 call from the fire. We do have that. Let's go ahead and hear a sample.
911, what's the location of your emergency?
500 Pequot Avenue. We need help as soon as possible. Someone's locked in a room with a fire.
So how many people are trapped?
Just one. Please hurry up. Please hurry up. This is urgent. This is
Yes,
really
ma'am, I
urgent.
realize
Please hurry
that.
up.
The fire department are all coming. All right?
Yes, hi.
Hey, this is Grod. 500 Pequot for a person barricaded in a room on fire. They're saying, okay?
Okay, there's a person barricade. Okay.
Okay,
yep, thank you. Hello? Yes, hi, we're on our way. The fire department is coming. Can you tell me what's happening there? Yeah, we've got a guy barricaded himself into a room in the back of the house, and the room's on fire. We can't get in. Okay, no responses. Okay, hold on 1 second.
Now, this all transpired around 3 a.m. Connecticut time. That is when they did find Tony. They were able to pull him out of the fire and transport him to a local hospital where he later died. And that is all the information we have so far. But as we continue to follow this story, please continue to follow it with us. Go to our website, lvrj.com. We will give you the latest update on this evening at 7 p.m. And from all of us here at the Las Vegas Review-Journal, I'm Renee Summerhour. Thank you for watching.